Okay, with our pond completed, it's time for the next step in our journey here as we rebuild our railroad. So what we're going to do next is lay down the grass mats. And that, once those grass mats are laid down, that will pretty much complete the base on which we can then start laying track and putting buildings down and putting up any other elements that we want to on top of that. So what we have done is we bought 2 new grass mats, and they basically cover a sheet of 4x8 plywood. There's a little bit of overhang to those. The dimensions are a little bit bigger than a sheet of plywood, but essentially that's what they cover. So we have one grass mat that is going to go on this sheet of plywood that's right in front of us. This plywood, you're looking kind of down the length of it, is a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Then we got this little center section here, which if we kind of zoom up here, if you watch the videos on our last redo, we had this little center strip that we just used a small piece to cover that kind of in the center, because then off here we still have this kind of half sheet of plywood. So that piece of plywood is about 4 feet wide, and it's a little longer this time because remember we extended that corner out there. So what we're going to do is use one of our new mats to cover this, one of our new mats to cover this, and then we're going to take a little remnant from our old mats. We'll find the nicest piece of those old mats we can, and that's what we'll put in the center. Now what we're going to do is start with the center, because we're going to lay that down. I said earlier that we virtually never glue anything down, make anything kind of permanent or make it too difficult to take down. This is the one exception. This little piece of grass mat is the one thing we glue down because it's a small remnant piece and we don't want it to curl up. We have another method which we'll show you to hold down the big pieces of grass mat, but for this little piece here, we're going to use a little contact cement and we're going to put that down first, and then we'll put down the other 2 large pieces of grass mat, and we'll only have 2 seams, and the 2 seams will just be running along, basically they'll run along the lines of the pond here, right in the center. So when you're putting down this grass mat, I think the idea is to end up with as few seams as possible that you may need to cover. So when we're done here, we'll have 2 seams. We'll do our best to hide them. But yeah, let's get started. We're going to get started with that centerpiece. So let's take our old grass mat, let's lay it over, we'll cut a remnant out that fits that centerpiece, and then we'll go ahead and contact cement that down, and then we'll move on to the 2 larger pieces. All right, so we've stretched one of the older grass mats here across this piece of plywood. This isn't where we're putting it, we're just stretching it over here so we can examine it and see if we can get a decent piece out of this to put over there in that center strip there. So this one here doesn't look too bad. I don't know if you can pick it up on camera here, but it's a little scruffy around the edges. There's some holes where we drilled for trees and so forth and some scratch up marks here, but the center looks pretty good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some measurements over here, and then we'll take our razor knife and we'll cut out a remnant, and then we'll place it over that end there and give it a test fit. Okay, after measuring, it looks like we need a piece about 63 inches long by about 23 inches wide. So we're cutting it a little bit long and a little bit wide so that we're leaving a little bit extra to trim. And we do want a little overlap on the sides just so that we don't have any gaps in the seams. I'd rather have the grass mats overlap by a little bit than be too short and not cover the plywood completely. So let's go ahead and cut this, and let's give it a test fit. Okay, so we're just going to use our T-square just to make sure we have enough. So we're just going to start at where the really kind of the good stuff here begins, where the least scruffiness is. And just take a nice sharp razor knife. I put a new blade in that. It's pretty important, like as we trim this, to make sure we get good clean cuts. So I'm just going to use my little T-square here just to make sure we're getting a good straight cut, just to get this end cut, and we'll get started. So the next thing we're going to do is cut our width, and we wanted 23 inches on the width. Now we want to cut that right out of kind of the center of the mat, because that's where the good stuff is. So I'm just going to take a 23-inch length on my tape measure, just kind of find the middle of where I want to cut, and then make my marks from there. Okay, with our remnant cut, we have it in place. So you can see it kind of overlaps both sides of the edges of the pond there, which is exactly what we want. And it overhangs at the end. So once we glue this down, then we'll trim it, right to the edges, so that it'll hug the kind of the edge of the pond and also the far edge. So our next step here will be to put some contact cement on and lay it down. So we're using this Weldwood contact cement. And how contact cement works is that you coat both surfaces that you're going to be fastening. So here we'll coat the back of the grass mat piece, and we'll also coat the wood that we're applying it to, and then you'll let it set for a little bit. And then if the contact cement has soaked into the wood to any degree, we'll just recoat it. And then what you do is after you've waited about maybe, 5 or 10 minutes, you can then take it to our grass mat, and we'll just kind of roll it onto the wood, and then we'll really press it down with kind of a rolling pin action with a piece of PVC pipe we have to make sure it's as flat as we can get it. After we're finished stirring up the contact cement, we'll get to that. We spread the contact cement out over the plywood surface and over the back of the grass mat surface. So now it's time for the moment of truth. We have to strategize how we're going to lay this out and flatten it out. So we're just going to suspend it in the air. We'll try to press it down from the pond end first and then just kind of lay it out to the end. And then we'll use a piece of PVC pipe to kind of roll it flat. And yeah, hope for the best. So there we go. Wish us luck. All right, that wasn't so bad. We got it down. It's relatively flat. I think it's actually pretty flat, so that's good. That's what that was our objective. So we're going to let that set and dry and adhere, to the plywood there. And then what we'll do is we'll trim the end by the pond. We'll trim the far end where it kind of slants there. And then that'll be done, and we'll be able to put on our other two pieces of grass mat once that's all settled. So we'll let it settle, do some trimming, and then we'll be able to lay our other two pieces of grass mat, and then our base will be done. So let's let it settle, and we'll catch up with you on the other side. With our center strip of grass mat all contact cemented down to the plywood, the next step is to trim that grass mat around the contours of the pond, which is what he's doing now. Now, don't be nervous about getting that trimming exactly right. There'll definitely be kind of a harsh transition between the grass mat and that little bit of foliage that we put right down along the edges of that plywood. You can always cover any of those rough transitions with more landscaping material, some of that woodland scenic stuff, for example. So that's probably what we'll do. We just want to get the trimming done so that the grass mat contours match the contours of the pond. And then after we're done with the trimming, we'll put the rest of the grass mats on. So the trimming on the edge of the pond is now complete. Now you might notice that there is a white line kind of where the grass mat meets the foliage that's down in the pond a little bit, right where the grass mat ends. So we'll take care of that by spreading a little bit of white glue along that white line and then sprinkling some woodland scenics, the loose grass that you can buy in the plastic containers, and that should cover that up quite nice. But for now, we are going to open up our grass mats that we ordered from Amazon and spread them out and begin to attach them. All right, with the grass mat out of the tube, we're just going to roll it out on the table. It's easier to just let it roll out in the direction it wants to roll and then flip it over. Okay, so with our grass mat laid out, you'll notice that the grass mat has a little bit of overhang on all sides, which is good because it's a little bit bigger than the dimensions of a sheet of plywood. So if a sheet of plywood is all you have to work with, then you know it'll fit over it. There'll be some overhang to work with for trimming or whatnot. But what we want to do is lay this nice and flat, make sure that one line there is in line with the edge of our pond. And then what we'll do is when it's nice and straight, we'll cleat one end to the table. And that way we know that when we pull it, it'll be nice and straight, as we laid it out. Now, one thing that we're going to do here is, I had mentioned earlier that we don't really glue much of anything. We don't want anything really permanent. But in this case, what we're going to do is we are going to contact cement our grass mat just on this one side where the edge lines up on the pond and also where it overlaps the little grass mat remnant that we have over there. Just along that edge to tighten the seams up and to make sure that it adheres to the plywood next to the pond and on top of that grass mat remnant. So we'll put the cleat in to make sure that when we pull it, it's nice and straight. And then we'll put some contact cement on the back side, just up again that strip right there, that left-hand strip. And then we'll let it dry a little bit, and then we'll pull it all over, and we'll cleat it on the opposite side, and we'll push, we'll compress the grass mat along that seam there so that the contact cement adheres. So anyway, hopefully our demonstration will be better than my explanation, but yeah, let's get started. We're going to snap a chalk line right along the edge of the grass mat where it intersects with the grass mat remnant, only to make a mark so that we know where to end putting on our contact cement, so that we don't get the contact cement onto the surface that we're going to see. So we'll snap that line real quick and then we'll continue on. If we got any chalk on any other part that we didn't really want to get chalk on, it is kind of messy, dusty stuff. That chalk will wear off over time, so we're not too worried about that. Okay, so we got one cleat in holding one end of that grass mat in. The other end is still loose and floppy. We'll end up painting this cleat this time around. We didn't do it on our last layout, but this layout here, we'll paint that green so it kind of blends in a little bit better than the wood. But the next thing we're going to do is pull the whole mat back so that we're looking at the white side. And then we're going to put on some contact cement. We're going to let that sit, and then we're going to pull it all back over. Get the get the mat with the contact cement, flat on the layout, and then we'll cleat it on the other end. And hopefully at the end of that, we'll have a nice straight grass mat that is adhering nice and kind of minimizing the visibility of the seams. Again, you can see some of that blue chalk, but that will work its way out over time, so not too worried about that. So anyway, let's do the next step. So he's applying that contact cement right down that strip. So we have the grass mat kind of pulled over, you can see right off the table. And then he's just doing that strip so that we can get it adhering nice and flat on the plywood next to the pond, and again over that little remnant of grass strip over there in the middle. That'll hold that end down nice. And then, if we have to pull the grass mat up sometime later, the only thing we have to worry about is pulling it up on that one strip, really. Otherwise, it's just a matter of releasing those cleats and pulling it off, which is nice and easy. When we did our layout last time, we did the same technique, and you saw how easy it was to kind of dismantle this whole thing. And actually, we also had a little center strip on that version of our layout, the last version of our layout too. And that peeled off the plywood pretty good. But that's a small piece, and I'm not sure how easy it would be to peel a huge, 4x8 sheet of this off. Might be totally easy, but we'll just stick with this, just contact cementing this strip down, seeing how it goes. All right, it's the moment of truth here. We're going to now take our grass mat and we're going to flip it up and lay it down on the plywood, and hopefully our contact cement, we won't goof that up. So yeah, we're just gonna it's gonna take both of us to do this. So we're just gonna let the camera roll and hopefully everything works out in the end. All right, that didn't go too bad. We stretched it across and we got our little seam there covered up. Now we'll probably still have to do a little work over there to kind of neaten that up. But at least it's sitting flat, and both pieces of grass mat there are adhered to each other. But we can definitely do some things to improve that. But we got the cleat on down here. The only thing we need to do now is put the cleat at the other end. All right, so grass mat number 1 is complete. We got this edge right here, all contact cemented to the edge of the pond, and where it overlaps that small remnant piece over there. And then we've got our cleat at this end, and then the cleat at the other end. We pulled the grass mat nice and taut, and then put the cleat at the other end, and yeah, it looks pretty good. Now every once in a while, you may have to release one of the cleats and kind of pull it taut again and kind of refresh it. We did that a couple times with our last layout, and it was fine. It worked out pretty good. Yeah, so that grass is nice and flat. And now we got to cover this last piece of plywood here, and we're good to go. So we have our grass mat laid across the plywood on the opposite side here so that we can fit it and cut it. So it's going to be the same approach. We're going to cleat one end, we'll roll it back, we'll put contact cement on the edge that's right next to the pond and that little remnant over there. There's a slant over there, so we have to cut that off. But super easy procedure. We're basically just doing the same thing we did on the opposite side here, just over there. So yeah, let's get busy fastening our grass mat. So as we're getting ready to apply our contact cement, we ran into a problem that I should have seen coming, but didn't. We're not going to be able to cleat this at the bottom and then fold our grass mat back because we have this column right here. And we also have a column over there. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are dealing with obstacles in their basement as they plan their layouts. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to improvise, and we're going to just fold our grass mat over like that, the way you see it, maybe a little bit more at that end, and then we'll paint our contact cement directly on like that. We'll do our contact cement on our wood section there, and then we'll just let it dry. And then what we'll do is we'll fold it over and attach the contact cement piece first, and then we'll stretch it out afterwards, and I think that'll work out just fine. So anyway, so let's do that. We're going to go ahead and put our contact cement on our grass mat just where it's sitting. We'll cement that into place, and then we'll stretch it out from there with our cleats. All right, here we go. Okay, as part of reassembling our layout, we're going to be making some new bridge sections to cross our little pond feature. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use our 3D printer and we're going to print bridge sections. So we went on Thingiverse and we found a bridge that we thought would work for us. The problem is that the bed of the 3D printer isn't big enough to create a bridge section that's wide enough to span our pond. Our pond is 21 inches wide. So anyway, what we're going to do is we've figured out that we need 3 sections of bridge in order to span the pond, based on the bed size that we have here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to print 3 sections of bridge, and we'll catch up with you after that and show you how they came out. As the print gets started, let me tell you what we're working with here. The printer is the Creality Ender 3 S1 Pro. We've had good luck with this. We've printed a bunch of stuff. Maybe you've seen some of our rolling stock that we've printed on this printer. They've all come out pretty good, so we're pretty happy with it. And the filament we're using is a matte black 1.75 millimeter filament. 1.75 millimeters, that's very common. It's probably, 95% of the filaments used, with recreational printing like this. And the matte black we thought it was a good choice of color for the bridge, seeing that the bridge would hypothetically be iron and probably would be some kind of a matte color. But if we're not happy with the matte finish after the printing is all said and done, we can always paint it. The filament takes up, the print projects take up paint pretty well, so we can always do that. All right, so our bridge print is 100% done. Now let's take a quick look here. So not too bad. It's a pretty good looking bridge. And now we just need to repeat this print process 2 more times and we'll have our 3 sections of bridge which will span our pond. So let's print the other 2 bridge spans and then we'll give them a test fit on the pond and see how they look. Okay, with all 3 sections of the bridge done, here's what it's going to look like when it's over the pond. So those little blocks of wood that are underneath the bridge sections, those aren't the permanent supports there. That's just kind of a placeholder there just so you can see how the bridge will eventually look going over the pond. Now we're not going to fasten the bridge here in this video. We'll wait until we're laying the track and we know exactly where the bridge will cross the pond before we commit to fastening it down however way we end up doing that. But anyway, that's it for part 4. I think we've got most of our base coverings done here, and yeah, the next step will be to lay the track, which is kind of the whole purpose of the whole series here, is utilizing that Atlas Flex track. So we're really excited to get that started, and we'll see you in the next video.